afternoon. It's 20 to 1. Good afternoon, Hutch here again. It's a beautiful autumn day. The temperature is about 18 or 19 degrees. The sea is very acceptable, although we had quite a strong blow last week, but it hasn't really made a lot of difference to this part of the coast. They got it very bad down near Wellington with 5-metre swells. Anyway, here there's a few swells coming in, but the water's a reasonable colour, and the first casts are out and the baits are working. Now, I'm a little bit excited about today because I'm doing a few things that are different. I bought myself a couple of cannons. I don't mean I'm going to war, I mean the casting aids that take the weight off of your index finger when you're casting with typical reels. Now I thought whilst I was trying this as an experiment, I've also purchased a new reel, and this is something I'm quite excited about. I've used Shimano bait runners, which are an extremely good reel, but the bait runner, Shimano have never really gone into any thought over the spool, and on a bait runner, when the line gets down just a few millimetres below the lip, it starts holding up. So the company of Akios has come out with a reel with a specialised surf casting spool on it, and I've treated myself. I know I shouldn't. If my wife finds out, she'll kill me. She's holding the camera and she can't understand a word I'm saying, which is brilliant. Here we've got an Akios, and you can see the depth of spool is quite something. I've loaded it with Suffix line, which is a really good quality line. I've actually got up quite a bit. It's now on 21 pound breaking strain. I only normally use 12 or 13. But this line is so thin, even though it's only a very shallow spool, I've actually lost 300 metres of line on there, and I've got a 30 pound leader. Now, I'm not a long caster. I don't use the pendulum cast. I prefer the layback cast. I'm not interested in long casting. I'm too old and it's too energetic. Anyway, the first casts are out. I managed to cast okay with the cannons, but I'm very apprehensive about them at the moment. But I will certainly get a little bit used to them, and then I'll start putting a little bit more pressure on it and seeing if I can get the distance. Anyway, as I said, the casts are out, the baits are out, and a little bit later on I will show you that I've gone into a new way of baiting the hooks. I'm quite pleased with this. I've just done it for the very first time on those two casts. When I looked at the way they were presented with this new way of tying the bait, it's new to me anyway. I've never seen anybody in New Zealand use this method with anchovies or pilchards. Perhaps they do, I don't know, but to me it looks really good. Mind you, I suppose the proof is how the fish deal with it. Right, hi, I've just mentioned that I'm trying, pardon me if I keep looking round, but the moment I start talking to the camera, that's the time I'm going to get a bite. Murphy's Law, it always works that way. Look, I've got a very short, I can get it out my knee, very short trace with a keeper hook that just runs up and down, perfectly free, no bits and pieces, no bling, nothing like that. And the only other addition I've got is a wee bit of bait elastic. Right, with my anchovy, I've got a lot of ice on there, I'll get that off. First of all, I remove its head, which is what these are waiting for. I then take my knife, and carefully, it's frozen so it's not too bad, I can run my knife down through the anchovy. Now, I don't particularly want to open it up because that'll tear it apart, but all I do is then take the main hook, place it in the gap of the bait, fold it back together, take my bait elastic, and now bind it onto the hook. Now, before I go too much further, if the hook is bound onto the outside of the anchovy, it tends to turn. If it's bound on the inside of it, no matter how it turns, it's still hanging the correct amount out for a hookup. So now I just wind my bait elastic up the anchovy like such, and just to show that I'm greedy, I run it all the way back down again. Then just break it off. Now with my keeper hook, I do it the same way as well, at least I assume it's the same way as everybody else does. Sort out whereabouts roughly I want it to go. 1, 2, 3 turns through the bait and just take up the slack. Now what we've actually got are 2 hooks beautifully positioned in the bait. The barbs are showing very, very well. Now it doesn't make any difference whether I get a fish and come along and take it like that, or then get it on the main hook. But if a fish comes along and takes it like that, I shall then get it on the keeper hook. And in recent videos I've put on YouTube, you will see I've actually taken quite a lot of fish on the keeper hook. So there you are. I think you'll find that's a really nicely presented bait. I think so. Unfortunately, the fish usually agree with me. This is still the first cast, so I'm just about to use that and wind in and use that and put it out. Okay, here endeth the first lesson. Well, there's one thing when we're fishing on this beach, we never lack for company. Every single time we come to this spot, we always have this gull turn up. Well, that's a little bit unusual because it normally brings its well-grown chick. I've got a funny feeling that the chick may have been evicted to fend for itself. Always nice to have some company. Now all the anchovies I use for bait, I cut the heads off. You would think he knows. He always eats them. You've just seen me prepare that bait which I put onto the rod that's on this side, and I've cast that out. But this is the joy of this method. Look, I've wound that one in. That's been out and working away out there for about 20 minutes. It looks as though something may have had a little go at it, little small fish. Funnily enough, we get a shellfish in New Zealand that's quite partial to bait as well. It could have been a starfish. But it doesn't alter the fact that after 20 minutes, apart from this bit of cotton that's hanging off, that bait is still very capable of taking a fish. So I'm extremely pleased with this method. I don't see any reason why it can't be used with squid or mackerel or herrings or whatever. Pilchards are rather a large bait, but it could be used with pilchards as well. But for anchovies, that really is a good way of baiting your hooks. I hope you find this tip useful. If you already knew it, pardon me for preaching. I've never seen it on a New Zealand website. Well, I've actually shared with you a video on the first day that I used that other rod, and I caught a fish first cast. Well, I've just had a colossal bite on this rod, which I've probably missed. Come across and grab this. Yeah, there's no argument with that. They've really had a go at it. Oh well, I wasn't successful in landing a fish on the new reel first cast, but anyway, it shows fish are there. There was one very important factor I missed out when I was talking about this bait. Now, I don't really wish to harp on about it, but it is important. You can see that I've got this hooked up and the hooks are sitting nicely, but the other important thing is, because of this slip right the way down there that I've opened up with the knife, I've actually opened the gut cavity, and already this one's thawing out. You can see the beautiful juices from its internal workings coming out. So not only have we got a good bait, but for the first minute or two that that's in the water, it's actually going to be giving off a very attractive scent. Well, we got here at about 20 to 1 and it's now 20 to 4. Been a very, very quiet afternoon. I've had several takes, but what I used to call rats and mice, just small stuff. I haven't hooked up with anything. But they say the worst days fishing is better than the best days working, and I'm not about to argue with that, especially as I'm retired. Anyway, we're now on the last cast and I don't think that's going to change anything. I'm absolutely thrilled with this Achios reel. It is a joy to use. The line flows off the spool, there's no sensation of line going, there's no noise. It really is a joy to use. The other very pleasing thing about the afternoon has been using these cannons. Now, I've read about them and I've always been a little bit apprehensive about a casting aid, as they are classified as, but I'm absolutely delighted. For the first 2 or 3 casts it takes a little bit of getting used to as the line snaps off of the retainer, but then the line just goes. On a local angling website, somebody suggested that since they've started using these cannons, they'd added 30% on the distance they can cast. Well, 30% is a long way. To suddenly go from 100 metres to 130 odd metres seems a bit outrageous, but I will admit I am casting further with them. On the first day I wouldn't expect 30%, but I'm quite happy that it's obviously going a little bit further than normal. So the day exactly hasn't been a real blank, and I am pleased with this Suffix line. It is considerably more expensive than standard nylon, but it's considerably thinner and it flows off this Achios reel beautifully. I'm so impressed with it, I actually believe I may come away from braid on one rod and stay with nylon. Nylon on one and braid on the other, and do a compare apples with apples. Both set the end gear up exactly the same on both rods and see how I get on. So I'm glad you could join us on a really lovely afternoon on the beach. I mean, you would probably enjoy this sort of weather in an English summer. Excuse me, but I can assure you it's autumn. I've been here all afternoon in just shirt sleeves, I've got nothing on underneath. It's just an absolute gorgeous afternoon. I think the temperature was about 18 or 19 and I thoroughly enjoyed it. How can you not enjoy it? Sitting on a beach, clear blue sky, beautiful afternoon, the rod's out there. Okay, so I've drawn a blank, and I think that's about the first time for 3 or 4 months, so I'm not going to complain. Anyway, thanks for your company. I've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy just watching what I've been up to. So I'll catch you later.